So, Chapter 7, Supporting Your Ideas. This chapter always, in my mind, kind of floats around in the book. Uh, it, the topics that it covers really are most important to the informative and persuasive speech in a class like this. But of course, in the self-introductory speech, as you'll see, it's also there as well. So let's see what we have going on here. All right. Supporting your ideas, it's all about illustrate, clarify, and provide evidence. All right, and I'm going to adjust my screen just a little bit. Yes, providing evidence. Remember Aristotle? Yes. 3 elements of public speaking. Somebody remember what they are? I heard it. Logos. Anybody else? That's right, ethos. And one more here. Pathos, that's right. Logos, ethos, and pathos. Chapter 7 is actually all about ethos. And you're thinking, I gotta go look and see what that is. Ethos is credibility. Why people should believe you. If you don't support your ideas, your presentations, in your presentation, then why should people assume that what you're telling them is correct? Let's explore this a little bit. There's a chart in your book. Here it is right here. And it gives the types of support that you can give in speech. Narrative. What is a narrative? Storytelling. Examples. And they listen emotional, personal, etc., etc. You can look up through this at your leisure. Definitions. Emotional, logical, establishing common meaning. I think that's what really is important. Testimonial, what other people have to say about your topic. Facts, logical presentation. I still say it's all about ethos, though, because you're trying to provide evidence that what you're saying really is correct. And then statistics, once again, it says logical. The appeal is to logic. Yeah, it is, but once again, it's all about credibility. If I hold up, I have a plastic cup, there it is. If I hold up a plastic cup and say 10% of the world's oil supply goes into making these plastic cups and plastic bottles and plastic bags, then I might want to elaborate on that. Well, where did that bit of statistical information come from? Credibility. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all of these examples in this presentation. You can go back and look at the book. And once again, this chapter is a bit of prep for speeches. All right, so here, let's go. All right, so narratives. Now, here's a word you may want to know: antidotes, and that's not something you take when you've been bitten by a rattlesnake. This means a story of some kind, and the self-introductory speech is basically one long story. It's about you. But depending on the speech, what you're trying to establish, you could use someone else's story. A woman named so and so went through this experience. Let me tell you about it. It doesn't have to just be your story. You can draw on other stories as well. Institutional stories, well, that's something. Today I'm giving a speech, or I've been asked to give a presentation here at work about productivity. Let me tell you a little bit about the productivity in our department. That's an institutional story. It's something that your listeners are all part of. And of course, cultural stories, well, that one's pretty straightforward. That's stories based on a group shared ethnicity, religion, age, all of these things can play into the cultural stories. But of course, I think this one's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Narrative. It's all about telling stories. It says slide 1 of 2. All right, so slide 2 of 2 says, it's an example. Uh, this is a quote from Bruce Springsteen. You're thinking, who's that? Yeah, you all know who Bruce Springsteen is. He has Southwest by Southwest. There's a lot of assumption going on here. Uh, what is Southwest by Southwest? Recently, in San Antonio, Texas, at the great music festival, Southwest by Southwest, the guitarist Bruce Springsteen. See what I just did to this example that came straight from the book? I took it from a basic example to one that doesn't break rule number 2. There's no assumptions going on here. Anyway, what did Bruce say? I can't quite see all of it uh, for my own face down here in the corner. At first, it just didn't sound good to me. It just sounded cranky and old-fashioned. But slowly, my ears became accustomed to it. Its beautiful simplicity and its darkness and depth. Right? So he's giving a personal narrative here, as a way to draw people into his story, his presentation, and to also say, this happened to me. Okay, so it adds, what does it add? Credibility. All right, other examples. Um, Larger groups or classes of things. Okay, excuse me. I'm getting ahead of myself once again, as I tend to do. Examples. There are 3 kinds, and you can see them right here. General, so the big ones. Specific, narrow down, and hypothetical. Just imagine. This is kind of a chapter, but it's always good to put things in order and think about them in a clear manner. Here we go. All right, so the Ford Fusion Hybrid provided a specific example in a speech by someone in a class somewhere about the influence of Ford Motor Company on American culture. This particular car was the example. And this would be, I would think this would be a specific example. By the way, I just want to point out that I still own them. 2 Ford Fusions. So far, so good. One of them's 11 years old and has required very little maintenance. There's my plug for Ford Fusions. So, you're giving a specific example. The broader topic here that the student was giving the speech about was the influence of this mega company, Ford Motor Company, on American culture. But rather than just talking generalities, the student picked one specific car that they could use as an example on the influence that this company has had. And when I talked about the self-introductory speech, and I've talked about this before and will continue to talk about it, in any given speech, whether it's 5 minutes long or 20 minutes long, you start with something broad, Ford Motor Company's influence on American culture. And then you narrow that down into something manageable. In this case, one particular car and its influence over the last, almost 15 years on the buying public in America. Definition. Well, again, this one's pretty straightforward. You need to define what you want everyone to understand. And there's 2 terms here that will be on the midterm. Giving you a heads up. Denotative. And that's just simply a definition that you could literally, I can do this. Lean over. Oh my God, it's heavy. You remember these? I got to get it in the picture. A dictionary. Yes. And the definitions in that dictionary are denotative. In other words, they tell you exactly what a term or a word or whatever it might be, how it's defined. What about something, um, you're talking about love. Okay, I love to talk about love. If you're talking about something that, as you can see here, personal or even emotional connotation, and it's notative. I can barely say that. Notative. So the notative, just remember D stands for dictionary. Connotative, not quite sure how to get anything out of that. C is only 2 letters away from E, so it means emotional. Okay, so that's something more squishy. That's a technical term I use, squishy. Whereas D is not squishy. It's dictionary, it's denotative. So there are two different ways you can define your examples or your within your presentation that you're trying to support, either through very specific, uh, almost dictionary-like uh, definition, or something a bit more uh, personalized. All right, definition by function. What does this say? What is the definition of success in our business? Okay, so now you're only looking at success in specific to that company. What about Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous speech, "I have a dream"? I have a dream. Well, that's still a definition by function, but it's a much broader and emotional impact. So this, I think you might talk about as notative. I have a dream as connotative. As I said, I'm not quite sure I can even say it. So, two different ways to define things. Ah, this, this chapter goes on and on. Okay, definition by analogy. The rest of this sounds a lot like an English class. And in fact, some of the um, areas that I'm going to talk about here in just a moment uh, will come up in another lecture of mine on the use of language. So you'll hear some of this again, but this is just a good general overview. What's an analogy? Like studying for an exam, you want to be prepared for any situation that might arise. That's an analogy. It's like studying for an exam. So uh, if you use an analogy, and analogies are wonderfully powerful in a speech because it helps develop a personal connection with your audience. And then metaphor. I love metaphors. Metaphors are great. And this is kind of interesting. Just, you know, have you ever heard the term, in fact, this is a metaphor, climbing the ladder of success? That's a metaphor. All right. And uh, Shirley Sandberg changed it instead of a ladder, climbing a ladder to success, which you picture in your mind someone literally climbing a ladder in a straight line to their goal. Okay, she's changing that metaphor. She's calling it the jungle gym to success. You move sideways, you move down, you move up, and you move on. She's changed it, but it's still a metaphor. Now it's the jungle gym metaphor. Success. Once again, metaphors, we use them all the time, and we tend not to even realize we're using them. So metaphors, and I will talk more about metaphors uh, in that using language presentation as well. Similes, okay. Uh, let's see, similes. Think of the word simile as similar, and whenever you see an analogy that uses um, like or as, that's a simile. So what does this say here? According to the Culinary Institute of America, a traditional kitchen is like a pirate ship. Arr, I've got a joke for that one. Okay. We like all our flames. We like all our noise. We have our scars. We'd like to create a kitchen more like a yacht. Oh man, that's got two similes in it. A traditional kitchen is like a pirate ship. Okay, there's the first simile. Like is like. Okay. The second simile, we'd like to create a that's more like a yacht. Okay, so two similes going on in this scene. Once again, we do this all the time in everyday speech, and we never give it a second thought. Build it into your speeches, whether it's self-introductory speech, uh, uh, informative, persuasive, entertaining, whatever it might be. It builds credibility and it builds a connection with your audience. Testimonial. This one's kind of interesting, and you have to be very careful with testimonial. Remember, I told you that you use quotes as ways to get people's attention. Okay. See if I can remember it. That Roman senator said, "A room without books is like a body without a soul." That is a direct quote from a translation, by the way. Cicero was writing in Latin, but that's a direct English quote. What happens if you can't quite remember or find, or you deliberately want to paraphrase what someone has said? And I did that with Winston Churchill. And I told you at the beginning of your speech, Winston Churchill always said, "Tell them what you're going to tell them about." That's not a direct quote, but it's a paraphrase. So let's look at these and see how that might work with testimony. Okay, so there's 4 kinds. Expert testimony. Dr. Fauci said. Okay. Celebrity. Bruce Springsteen said. Maybe you guys aren't Springsteen fans. Well, you can think of other celebrities. And then lay testimony. These are lay testimony. Uh, there are professional people and lay people. Okay. Professional people, let's say you're a professional psychologist. That makes you a professional. And if somebody quotes from you, then they're quoting from expert testimony if they're talking about psychological care or needs or whatever it might be. If you're quoting from someone who has experienced a psychological trauma or event, but they're not professional psychologists or psychiatrists, then they're lay people. In churches, I know they talk about the minister and the lay people. In other words, the expert and those who may have experiences, but they're not experts or professional in a particular area, field, or profession. So anyway, so I said 4. There's 3 here: expert testimony, celebrity testimony, and lay testimony. All right, opinions. You know what someone once said? This is not a direct quote, and I don't know who said it. Opinions are like belly buttons. We'll go with that one. Opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one. Okay? So, opinions. Do general opinions carry much weight with an audience? We can explore that. Opinions from someone opinions from someone who the audience will perceive as a highly qualified on the topic. But it's still an opinion, isn't it? But if it's, again, I'll stick with Dr. Fauci. If Dr. Fauci says, uh, and let me back up for a thing. If Dr. Fauci says we should wear masks to help prevent the spread of coronavirus or the flu or any other airborne transmission, tuberculosis. Nobody remembers tuberculosis. It's another dreadful airborne disease that wearing a mask protected from. Is that an opinion, or is it a expert um, advice based on scientific evidence? Well, I would make the argument that it's based on scientific evidence. These different diseases are transmitted by airborne means, so wearing a mask will probably help protect you. All right. So, where does opinion begin and where does it end? All right. So, but if you're quoting someone um, who is an expert in the field, even if it's their opinion, so and so thinks, well, the very fact that you're quoting an expert provides weight, or as the Romans would say, gravitas, to that statement. celebrities. We all love celebrities. Uh, and I'm sitting here trying to think of some celebrities that well, movie stars. You know, we all have our favorite movie stars. And if your favorite movie star says something that you think is important and you want to incorporate in your speech, that could have weight. There's a downside of this, though. Not everyone likes the same celebrities. And so, again, be careful how you pick and choose these testimonies, these opinions uh, coming from other sources. And then lay testimony is opinions from someone who has experience. And this goes back to my I'm not an expert uh, here, but let me tell you about my experiences. Let me tell you about the experience of a friend of mine who uh, tried to cross country ski through a large portion of the Arctic. Whatever. Okay, so this is testimony, opinions coming from someone who's not a professional, but who's had the experiences. And this stuff is really pretty straightforward. And then continuing down this list, of course, facts and statistics. Well, there you go. Facts and statistics are tough to argue with. Well, you can't argue with them, can't you? Uh, Facts are specific observations. Okay. It's a fact that the Earth goes around the sun. Anybody want to argue with me? Okay, it's a fact the Earth is flat, and I can prove it. All right. So even facts are, you can play with them. Statistics are numerical data. Okay, you know that. What about the way you use the statistics, or a speaker that you're listening to is using the statistics? Can it be manipulated? Oh, you bet it can. So you as a listener or a presenter need to be very careful. But overall, providing specific data will increase the ethos, the credibility of what you're trying to get people to buy into in your speech, whether it be an informative or a speech. Facts and statistics are just great. Let's see. Fact: the King of Hearts is the only king without a mustache on a standard playing card. That's a pretty darn established fact. If you go pick up any modern deck of playing cards, you're going to find that the King of Hearts does not have a mustache. Imagine why he would want to be without one. And then statistics, whatever, Sri Lanka. I have not double checked this. I have not fact checked it. And I'm okay. I'm going to break rule number 2 and assume since it's in the book, it's probably a correct stat. Uh, Sri Lanka has a literacy rate of 92.3%. That's amazing. How can that be? Now, that sounds like a statistic that might be useful in a uh, speech about the educational system. All right. So there you go. Facts, statistics, things that you've used in the past yourself. Okay, inferences. Okay, inferences, opinions. An inference is something that conclusion that can be drawn from a specific fact. Okay, Dr. Fauci has said it's important for people to wear masks uh, of airborne transmission diseases. And I'm going to use a broader here because I suspect Fauci would agree with that one. So the inference is you're going to be better protected. That's the inference. That's the conclusion. That's what you're pulling from those facts and data. Uh, Opinions are just that. I've already said that. Opinions are uh, ideas and thoughts from professionals, lay people, whatever it might be. But opinions, at least in my book, don't carry the credibility factor, the weight uh, that facts and statistics are going to carry. Okay. Um, It's my opinion. Well, I won't even say opinion. I think if you drink milk, you're going to have strong bones. Is that true? I don't know. That's my opinion. I heard my mother say that. Eating carrots is good for your eyes. Is that a fact, or does that raise opinion? Turns out that eating carrots really don't affect your eyes very much. At least my wife has told me that. So, difference between facts and opinions. All right. Um, the Dairy Association has stated that drinking milk is good for your bones. How much weight does that carry? What does the Dairy Association sell? Milk. Mayo Clinic, in a major 20-year study, has found that 83% of the people in their groups who drank milk on a regular basis had higher bone density. Oh my, so we've gone from inferences to opinions to weighted opinions based on what the Dairy Association wants you to believe, to a study by the Mayo Clinic, which has a lot more weight. You can go and really sit down and look at their data, how they came up with that. So inferences, opinions, and I kind of cheated and went on to something a bit more uh, stronger in its ability to convince the audience. So again, this is in the book Facts versus Inference. I already gave my example of this. Let me just look at it very quickly. Made by observation. Uh, you know, noticed that drivers in Las Vegas, when they come to a stoplight, often leave more than one car length between themselves and the next car. Yeah, an observation. I don't even know what that means. Confined observations cannot be made about the future. Okay. Limited number of possibilities. Statements of inference gives you an unlimited number of possibilities. Oh, I can think of some examples. High probability, that's fact. Whereas just an inference, maybe, tends to, facts tend to further an argument or a presentation. Oh, absolutely. More likely to lead to a disagreement. If facts lead to agreement, maybe. Whereas just an inference, I think, could very easily lead to other people saying, well, where'd you get that? So they list some relevant websites here. Should have pulled this slide off. These are not live links, but if you're looking for any other information, I'll be glad to provide links as well. So there you go, supporting your ideas in your speech. Once again, with the upcoming informative and persuasive speeches, we'll find that, and I'll be going back over this as well. We'll find that this actually is very important. So there you go, chapter 7, and we'll see you in the next video.